some of them behind at the Capitol. Sort of like bad dreams, they just kind of keep on. But it's good to be with you this morning, and you honor me by inviting me over to spend a few minutes with you. As all of you know, we are in the 2012 session of the General Assembly. Yesterday we completed the 28th legislative day. This is a very, very busy time of the session as we work toward what we call crossover day, which will be next Wednesday. I don't know where that came from. We have all these sort of allegories about, crossover day. We have 40 days in the session, and sometimes it gets a little interesting as to how we kind of compare how we do things. But what that means is that by next Wednesday, for a House bill to be considered by the Senate, or a Senate bill to be considered by the House, if they're passing anything in the Senate, I'm not sure they are, but then it has to be out of their respective chamber. And so we're working at a pretty strong clip to take care of business over there. We're out of session today and tomorrow. Go back in Monday and then take a day and then go in Wednesday for that day. And then we'll start the dash toward the finish line. We're hoping that we'll be able to make that mark a little earlier than we have in the past. People remind me from time to time that former Speaker Murphy used to like to try to finish the session by St. Patrick's Day, or while the Braves were still in spring training. So, well, that was when the state was about half the size it is now and a lot less going on than we have, but we are going to try to finish up a little earlier this year than normal. We're working on a lot of, I think, challenging initiatives. Obviously, the only thing that we have to do, the most important thing that we do is to develop and adopt a state budget. I learned early on in my speakerhood that I was very jealous of my colleagues in Washington. We have a little annoyance called a balanced budget requirement in our Constitution, which is a very radical concept. It means you have to match expenditures with revenue. They don't seem to have to do that very much up there, and I get jealous of them from time to time. But we have come through some tough times through this historic economic downturn that we have been in. Over the last 3 years, we have cut about 20% out of your state budget. We haven't raised taxes, and that's the way we've chosen to balance the budget. And I'm very, very proud of that record. We're probably going to have to do some more nipping and tucking this session. I hope the cuts, don't expect the cuts will be sort of the draconian nature that they have been over the last few years, because hopefully although we probably are not in the kind of recovery that we want to be in, we think we may have hit the bottom and we're not going down any further, and at least have a little bit more stability in the budget than we have in the past. We have some other initiatives too that we're working on. Yesterday in the House, we passed the first substantial and I think major revision of the juvenile justice code here in Georgia that we've passed in decades. We passed that out of the House. We've sent that on to the Senate. I think it will update and and bring our juvenile law here in Georgia up to the 21st century. I was very, very proud of that. A lot of hard work went into that over a long period of time. We're working also, and I see the Chief Justice here, and I'm honored to be with her, on a reform of the way we sentence people in our criminal justice system. This is something that I'm very, very passionate about, and I know Chief Justice is, and Governor Deal has been a strong proponent of that. Looking at ways that we can take not the violent offenders in our society, but those whose criminal conduct stems primarily from dependency and substance abuse issues, to take that category of offender and look for ways of treatment or alternatives to incarceration. We have a rate of incarceration here in Georgia that frankly we should not be proud of. And I think it's time that we look at ways of doing things different and turning tax burdens into taxpayers and putting people back in the homes and with their families rather than having families have to come to prison and visit with them. And I think that we have an opportunity this session, if we can muster up the political will to do some things that are long overdue in that arena. So those are some of the things that we're working on, and I hope we'll be able to bring to fruition. And they asked me to come over this morning. They said they wanted me to talk about leadership. So I want to just kind of share a couple of observations about that with you. I guess when I think of leadership, I don't think about the kind of leadership that you can walk into Barnes and Noble and go to the category on leadership, buy a book, and know how to do it. I sort of believe that sometimes you have to kind of do it the old hands-on way. You have to fall down and dust yourself off and get back up and go back at it. A couple of issues that we are working on this session, I think, kind of make one of the points that I think is really important about leadership, and that is that sometimes leadership requires just persistence and determination and patience. One of the things that we will offer Georgians this year is the T-SPLOST referendum this summer. When I became Speaker in 2010, that was an issue that had been on the legislative table for at least 3 and maybe 4 years and without any solution for it. I was determined that we had probably studied the issue enough and had sort of kind of put all the pieces together enough, and that it was time that we offered Georgians a solution rather than rhetoric and failure. But it had taken time to get to that point. But I was determined that with all the political capital I had, that we were going to get that issue off the table and move it forward. And we were able to do that, but it did not happen overnight. We developed a process where Georgians now will have the opportunity to decide what sort of transportation future they want. And that's as it should be. This process has been guided by local control, by local input, by having the regions across the state come together and develop a list of priorities for that region, and gone through a very thorough vetting process to offer up then this summer to Georgians to decide what kind of future it is they want in transportation. They will have the ultimate decision, not politicians. Now, you know, there's a lot of clatter down there and a little bit of push to sort of change it, pull it off the table, let's start over again. I think it's time that we just move forward and let Georgians make that decision, and that's what's going to happen come July. Another issue that we're working on this session kind of comes out of that same belief that sometimes you have to have dogged, thank you very much, determination, and again that persistence, and that's the issue of tax reform. You know, I tell people that sometimes the timing is not my strong point. I was elected Speaker in December of 2009. Found out the next morning that we were facing the largest budget shortfall in Georgia history since the Great Depression. It almost made me want to just go back to Blue Ridge and take up the simple life I had up there before I became Speaker. But we set about to try to balance the budget, and one of the things that we did was we decided that this was probably a good point in our history to sort of examine how we do things. You know, sometimes when things go well and in good times, we all become complacent and we don't challenge the way we do things or ask how we can do things better. We decided in the House that this was a really opportune time to look at our economic sort of policy here in Georgia. And we came up with a notion of creating a tax reform council with one simple charge, and that was to look at ways that we could become the most competitive state in the nation from a tax policy standpoint in terms of creating jobs here in Georgia. And so we created that council in the 2010 session. We put some of the most successful and bright and free-thinking minds, no politicians, on that council, and gave them one charge. Go around Georgia, talk to Georgians, engage with Georgians on what kind of tax policy they think we ought to have, and bring back recommendations that will make us the most competitive, most job-friendly state in the country. And they took us up on that, and they came back with some very bold ideas that they brought back to us in January of 2011, and we wrestled with those last session. We got into what I guess in football they call the red zone. We weren't able to quite get it in the end zone because of some things that were kind of not related to the proposals. But I was determined that we were not going to turn the ball over there, that we were going to keep pushing. And we've continued to push this year. And I think that we're very close now to having a plan that can be agreed upon by both the House and the Senate and the governor that will do some things that will stimulate the economy from a tax standpoint here in Georgia. In terms of repealing the sales tax on energy used in manufacturing, things that will, I think, truly ignite the economy here in Georgia. And we got a little glimpse, I think, of what kind of future that we can have here a couple of weeks ago when the Caterpillar Corporation decided to open a new large facility next year over in Clark and Oconee County. 1,400 jobs will be available there immediately when that facility is open. And projections are another 2,000 to 3,000 jobs in affiliated businesses located in the immediate area as a result of that location. That's the kind of activity that happens when states dare to do the right thing and to think big and to look at ways of doing things in a non-traditional way. You know, Caterpillar is kind of slowly dismantling their operations. They're the largest private employer in the state of Illinois. They have publicly threatened to move out of Illinois because of that state's tax policy. And you know, you can read all the other stories about California, for example. States that have chosen not to show the political will that we have here in Georgia to do the right thing, but to continue to raise taxes because they can't cut spending, and businesses are leaving the state. I think Georgia has an exciting future. We have many other things that I think that persistence and determination and dedication can lead us to even more exciting opportunities. The expansion of the Savannah River Harbor that we can enlarge our port system. No greater economic development project in generations here in this state, or for generations to come, than that project. And that's something that I'm very excited about. I think all Georgians should be. And that's the kind of future that we're envisioning for our state, and the kind of future that we're focused on is a state that's busy, that's growing, that's providing jobs, that's providing opportunities, and is providing a better way of dealing with old problems through dedication and persistence. So thank you for having me over here this morning. I don't think you want me to answer any questions while I'm here. Okay. Is there any media here? She'll stop me on the way out. I'll be happy to take a question if anybody has one before I go back over to the Capitol. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, can South Carolina successfully blockade the expansion of the Savannah Port and the river project?
Can they successfully? Well, I think the answer is no, but I hope we don't get to that point. I have said I hope South Carolina chooses not to be an island, but to be a part of our region, because this ultimately is going to benefit South Carolina, I think, as much as Georgia. You know what? One of the things that gets lost in the discussion is that at the port down there now, there are more South Carolinians working than Georgians at the Georgia port. So this is not about Georgia, and it's not it's not about a competition or rivalry. I think we can work together, and I think there's a lot of internal discussion in South Carolina. There's not a solid front. I think ultimately they're going to come around. Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, my name is Omar Latouf. I'm a professor at Emory University. We have been studying the economic impact of certain diseases in our state. One in particular called cardiometabolic syndrome, obesity, hypertension, diabetes, and high cholesterol. Those diseases cost our state every year between actual act, out of pocket, early retirement, and early death, over $80 billion a year. What strategy could our state and our leadership do to bring those expenses down to the group?
Well, I think that obviously, I guess at the heart of your question kind of gets at what can government do to sort of regulate individual behavior and individual conduct, and that's an issue we've been struggling with for a long time. I have my own views on that, but you know, a lot of the insurance carriers and others in the managed healthcare field are developing some incentive-based approaches with their clientele and their insureds. I think that's obviously one part of the strategy. Education, I think, has to be another part of the strategy. It's a big question, but ultimately, I think I don't know the complete answer, because I think ultimately it kind of rubs up against the notion of how far can and should government go to get into those kind of issues. No other questions?
Mr. Speaker, good morning. Mike Klein with the Public Policy Foundation.
Yes.
Do you anticipate changes to personal income, corporate income, or sales tax rates in the tax reform package?
The point I was making about leadership and about patience and persistence and kind of continuing to work hard sort of kind of leads me to this answer on that. There was a lot of discussion last session about those kind of things. Probably not going to hear much this year. But I also hope that whatever we get done in tax reform this year, that it's not the end of reform. There are a lot of other things out there that we can do. I would like to see us work really hard on pushing the individual rates down here in Georgia, because I think that not only is good for families and workers, I think it's good for small businesses that are paying at that rate. And so I think, I don't expect that now, but I think in the not too distant future, those are going to be back on the table in a very serious way. One more? Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, Kevin Hishner with Local 3 Deacons. Where do you see our state 10 years from now as far as advances and developments with our water supply?
That's an issue we've been wrestling with for more than 10 years. Still wrestling with. I'm you know, There's a lot of components to that issue, some of which are going to have to, will require partnering with our neighbor states, whether it's resolving the Alabama-Florida situation, or whether Tennessee finally recognizes where the real state line is between us and them. And you know, that's certainly something that we're looking at. The governor has been a strong advocate, and I support him, of an expanded reservoir system through public-private partnerships here in the state. I think that's obviously a component. I think there's not one single solution. I think it's going to require some partnerships with our neighbors, and that's something that I'm kind of a real proponent of. You know, I can remember, you know, a couple, 3 decades ago when multi-county partnerships were sort of a controversial issue here in Georgia, and now it's sort of the norm for many of the things that we do. And I think the next kind of frontier is multi-state partnerships. You know, we're not competing so much with South Carolina, Tennessee, or our neighbors. I mean, we're competing with other states and frankly other nations in the world. I think we have to understand that, and so that's why, to answer the South Carolina question, that I hope we can, that they will recognize that we have more that we can gain from partnering than from competing. So I think that, and that addressed your question, but I think the solution is going to require a number of components, and I think the 2 or 3 I mentioned, and obviously conservation will be key to that. Thank you all very much for letting me be with you.